Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Dylan Spivey. We warmly welcome the family of Private Herbert James Rowland, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who've given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Herbert James Rowland. Herbert Rowland was born on the 26th of February 1887 in South Melbourne, Victoria. Always known as Bert, he was the 10th of 11 children born to Michael Rowland and Christiana Grabowski. Little is known of his early life, but growing up in Melbourne, Bert had served 11 months compulsory military training as a senior cadet and had worked as a mail hand at Yarra Junction. When the First World War broke out, Bert was employed as a sawmill worker. Within weeks of the declaration of the war, on the 20th of August 1914, Bert enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Melbourne, joining the newly raised 7th Battalion, assigned to Bravo Company, with the rank of private. Bert and his fellow recruits were assembled, equipped, and given basic training at Broadmeadows Army Camp. 2 months later, on the 19th of October 1914, Bert embarked with his unit from Melbourne aboard the troopship Haratoa, stopping at Albany to assemble a convoy and collect their escort ships. The Haratoa crossed the Indian Ocean bound for the Middle East. The battalion arrived in Egypt in early December and continued their training in the desert for several months. Following the First Suez Offensive in February 1915, where the Ottoman forces were beaten back, the 7th Battalion was posted to the Suez Canal for defensive duties. But during this time, they saw no combat. On the 5th of April 1915, the 7th Battalion, as part of the 2nd Brigade, moved to the Greek island of Lemnos in preparation for the Gallipoli campaign. Bert, now attached to Alpha Company, spent 2 weeks at Lemnos with the men continuing their training. They made route marches around the island and practiced handling the ship's boats in which they would land. Late on the night of the 24th of April, the men of the 7th boarded the troopship Galacca and Clan McGilvray at Madras Harbour, Lemnos, to sail the short distance to the Gallipoli Peninsula. By 4:45 a.m, they arrived at their anchorage, and almost immediately plans began to unravel. Towed boats were meant to arrive and take the men to shore, but these were not available, and the men were ordered to land in the ship's boats. The 7th Battalion was part of the second wave to land at Anzac Cove at 5:30 a.m. on the 25th of April. This landing was particularly confused, and the battalion became fragmented. The 7th Battalion troops came under heavy fire from Turks defending a position known as Fisherman's Hut, while the rest were landed further south. As Alpha Company landed, they came under heavy machine gun fire and soon became mixed in with other units. Many men were killed in the landing boats before ever setting foot on shore. Sometime during the morning of the 25th of April 1915, Private Rowland was reported missing. He was later determined to have been killed in action. He may have been one of the men in the leading boat of the 7th Battalion killed before reaching the shore, or he may have been part of a hastily reorganised force sent to reinforce the line to the right of the beach landing. In the chaos of the landing, no witness accounts of Private Rowland's death appear on his military file. His body was never recovered. Herbert Rowland was 28 years old. Of the 7th Battalion that landed on Anzac Cove on the 25th of April, 5 officers and 179 soldiers were killed that day. Rowland's name is commemorated at the Lone Pine Memorial to the missing. This commemorates more than 4,900 Australians and New Zealand servicemen who died in the area and whose graves are unknown. Perhaps seeking in the memorials built by the military authorities in 1926, Bert's father requested 8 copies of the Lone Pine Memorial's register that identified his son's entry on the monument. Bert's niece May placed memoriam notices in the Age an Anzac Day each year in remembrance of her uncle. For the soul of the man that dies for the right is stronger when free from day, and the boy that went down in that April dawn is with us from day to day. Herbert Rowland's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Herbert James Rowland, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. And at the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.